The war room fell silent when Admiral Zethrax spoke the name. Every alien in the chamber, 12 species, each one older than humanity by thousands of years, stopped breathing. Ambassador Akira Velshin watched their faces change. She saw fear. Real fear. The kind that made warriors forget their training and diplomats forget their words. "Commander Marcus Cole," the Admiral said again, his reptilian voice low and careful, like he was afraid the name itself might hear him. Kira stood near the back of the great circular chamber on Station Meridian. Her pale blue skin glowed softly in the dim light, as it always did when she felt strong emotions nearby. And right now, the emotions in this room were very strong indeed. The Sylvari were an empathic species. They could feel what others felt. And what Kira felt from these powerful alien leaders was something she had never expected. Terror. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the advancing Wrath fleet. Red dots moved across the star map like a disease spreading through healthy flesh. The Wrath Dominion had been conquering worlds for 6 months now. Nothing stopped them. Their warriors were 7 feet tall, covered in natural armor, and they lived only to fight and kill. They had destroyed 3 colony worlds already. Millions were dead. "We cannot summon him," said Counselor Ven, a thin insectoid creature from the Keth Collective. His antennae trembled as he spoke. "You do not understand what you are asking. You do not call for Marcus Cole. You unleash him." Kira leaned forward with interest. She had heard whispers about this human, of course. Everyone had. Stories passed from ship to ship, station to station. Tales that seemed too wild to believe. A single human soldier who had held a mountain pass against 1,000 enemies. A man who had walked out of the siege of Carbon 4, the only survivor, leaving 10,000 Wrath dead behind him. She had dismissed these stories as propaganda. Humans were new to the Galactic Concord. They had joined only 40 years ago, still considered children among the ancient races. They were soft creatures. No claws, no armor, no venom. They could not see in the dark, or breathe underwater, or survive in vacuum. By every measure, they were weak, and yet the mightiest warriors in the galaxy spoke this one human's name like a curse. "We have no choice," Admiral Zethrax growled. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his yellow eyes swept across the council. The Kovani were a proud warrior race. They feared nothing, but even he kept his voice low. "The Wrath have taken 17 systems. They will reach the inner worlds within 3 months. Our fleets are broken. Our armies are scattered. We need him. Need him?" Councilor Ven made a sharp clicking sound. The last time humans fought without limits, they nearly burned their own world to ash. They spent 10,000 years killing each other before they ever reached the stars. And this Cole, he is the worst of them. He's what happens when you take human rage and human grief and human stubbornness and remove every limit. Kira felt a chill pass through her. She had studied human history, of course. All diplomats did. She knew about their endless wars, their weapons that could crack planets, their terrible creativity when it came to death. But she had always believed that was the past. Modern humans seemed so friendly, so eager to please, so harmless. Were they only pretending? The debate continued for hours. Some wanted to surrender to the Wrath and hope for mercy. Others wanted to keep fighting with conventional forces. But slowly, painfully, the Council came to accept the truth. They were losing, and they had only one weapon left. When the vote finally passed, Kira felt her heart sink. She knew what was coming before Admiral Zethrax even spoke. "Ambassador Velshin," he said, his yellow eyes finding her in the crowd. "You will serve as diplomatic liaison to Commander Cole. You will find him, deliver our message, and accompany him on his mission." Kira wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But she was Sylvari. Her people did not run from duty. "Yes, Admiral," she said quietly. That night, alone in her quarters, Kira accessed Marcus Cole's classified file. She had the clearance. She almost wished she did not. The file opened with a photograph. She had expected a giant, a monster. Instead, she saw a man. Brown hair going gray, lines around tired eyes. A face that might have been kind once, before something terrible carved all the softness away. She read his history. Born on a farming colony called New Eden, married young. A daughter named Lily who loved to watch the stars. A simple life, growing food and raising a family. Then the wrath came. The report was clinical. Colony destroyed. 3,000 dead. No survivors from the Cole family residence except Marcus himself, who had been in the fields when the attack came. He returned to find his home burning, his wife's body in the doorway, and his daughter's small hand reaching out from under the rubble. Something broke in him that day. Or perhaps something woke up. He enlisted the next morning. Within 2 years, he was Special Forces. Within 5, he was a legend. The Ghost of Carbon, the Butcher of Black Ridge, the man who walked into battles that killed armies and somehow walked out again, leaving nothing alive behind him. Kira scrolled through the kill counts and felt sick. She was Sylvari. She felt life as precious, sacred. And this man had ended so much of it. But then she found another file buried deep. A psychological evaluation from 3 years ago. The doctor's notes were brief but haunting. Subject shows signs of severe survivor's guilt. Continues to blame himself for failing to protect his family. When asked why he keeps fighting, subject stated, "Because someone has to stand between the darkness and the people who can still be saved." Subject then requested to end the session. Kira stared at those words for a long time. Her hands trembled as she closed the file. Tomorrow she would travel to find this man. This weapon. This monster who had once been a farmer, a husband, a father. She did not know what she would say to him. She did not know if he would help them or even if he could be controlled. She only knew that the galaxy had grown so desperate that they had chosen to wake the sleeping dragon. And she, a simple diplomat who had never held a weapon in her life, would be the one to knock on his door. Outside her window, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere among them, the Wrath were advancing. And somewhere else, alone in exile, a man named Marcus Cole was waiting. Kira did not sleep that night. The ice moon of Nick 7 was a frozen hell. Wind screamed across the surface at 200 miles per hour. The temperature dropped so low that metal became brittle and shattered like glass. No sane creature would live here, but Marcus Cole had stopped being sane a long time ago. Kira's shuttle fought through the blizzard, its engines straining against the wind. Her pilot, a nervous young human named Torres, kept glancing back at her with worried eyes. "Ambassador, are you sure about this?" he asked. "The readings say it's -60 out there. Even with thermal gear, a Sylvari can only survive maybe 20 minutes in that cold." Kira wrapped her arms around herself. Her species came from a warm world of jungles and oceans. Cold was not just uncomfortable for her. It was deadly. "Just land the ship, Lieutenant," she said quietly. They found the outpost at the base of a frozen mountain. It was small and ugly, a collection of metal buildings, half buried in ice. Smoke rose from one chimney. A single light burned in one window. Someone was home. The shuttle landed hard, nearly tipping over in the wind. Kira pulled her thermal suit tight and stepped out into the storm. The cold hit her like a physical blow. Even through the suit, she felt her blood slowing, her thoughts turning sluggish. She stumbled toward the light. The door of the main building opened before she reached it. A figure stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the warm glow inside. Not as tall as she expected. Not as broad. Just a man in warm clothing, with gray at his temples and a face that had forgotten how to smile. "You're freezing," Marcus Cole said. His voice was rough from disuse. "Get inside." He did not wait for her to answer. He simply turned and walked back into the warmth, leaving the door open behind him. Kira followed. The inside of the building surprised her. She had expected a weapons cache, a war room full of battle plans. Instead, she found a home. Simple furniture, books on shelves, and in one corner, under special growing lights, a small garden. Green plants reached toward artificial sunlight. Flowers bloomed in colors that seemed impossible on this frozen world. "You garden," Kira said, unable to hide her surprise. Cole was making something hot at a small stove. He did not look at her. "I used to be a farmer. Before." He handed her a cup of something warm. Tea, she realized. A human drink. She wrapped her cold fingers around it gratefully. "You know why I'm here," she said. "Yes." "The Galactic Council," I said no. Kira blinked. "You have not heard what I don't need to hear it." Cole finally looked at her, and she saw something terrible in his eyes. Not anger, emptiness. The wrath are coming. The Council is afraid. They want their monster back. He turned away again, staring at his garden. "The answer is no. I'm done killing." Kira set down her tea. Carefully, slowly, she reached out with her empathic senses. Silvari could feel the emotions of others. It was a gift. Sometimes it was a curse. What she felt from Marcus Cole nearly broke her. Grief. Endless, bottomless grief, like an ocean with no floor. Rage burning beneath it, hot enough to melt stars. And wrapped around all of it, holding it together by sheer force of will, was something harder than steel. Control. The control of a man who knew exactly what he was capable of and refused to let it out. She gasped and pulled back. Trembling. Cole watched her with knowing eyes. "You felt it," he said quietly. "Now you understand. I'm not a weapon you can point at your enemies. I'm a bomb. And if I go off again, I don't know if I can stop." Kira took a long breath. She looked at the garden, at the careful way he had arranged each plant, at the small watering can sitting beside the growing lights. "You're not a monster," she said softly. "You're a man who became one because he had no choice, and you hate yourself for it." Cole said nothing, but she saw his hands tighten into fists. "I read your file," Kira continued. "All of it. I know about New Eden. I know about your wife. Your daughter. Don't." The word came out like a warning. "I know you're not fighting because you love war. You fight because you love them, and you couldn't save them. So you've spent the last 20 years trying to save everyone else instead." The silence stretched between them. Outside, the wind howled against the walls. "It doesn't matter," Cole finally said. "I can't go back to what I was." "I won't." Kira nodded slowly. She understood. She started to rise, ready to accept failure, when her communicator beeped. She looked at the screen, and her blood turned to ice colder than anything outside. "Station Meridian has fallen," she whispered. "The Wrath have taken it. The entire council is hostage." Cole went very still. "Warlord Kathvorak is broadcasting a message," Kira continued, her voice shaking. "He knows about you. He's calling you out. He says he wants to break humanity's champion. He says if you don't come, he'll execute the hostages. All of them." She turned the screen toward Cole. The broadcast played. She watched his face as he saw the hostages. Diplomats, officers, civilians. Children. 3 small faces huddled together in a corner of the cell. A young Carvani boy. 2 human girls no older than 7. Cole's expression did not change. But Kira felt something shift in the room. The temperature seemed to drop. The air grew heavy. And in Marcus Cole's eyes, something ancient and terrible woke up. "How many Wrath on the station?" he asked. His voice was flat, calm, dead. 30,000. "How many troops can you give me?" Kira's heart jumped. "A full assault is impossible. We might be able to provide a small team. 10, perhaps 12 soldiers." Cole nodded slowly. He looked at his garden one last time. Then he turned away from it. "Pack light," he said. "We leave in 1 hour." Kira stood and followed him toward the door. "Commander Cole," she said quietly. "Why? You were done. Why did you change your mind?" He stopped. He did not turn around. "Because someone has to stand in the dark," he said, "so others can live in the light." Then he walked out into the cold to prepare for war. The stealth cruiser Perseverance cut through space like a knife through black silk. It was a human ship, fast, quiet, and deadly. Kira had never been aboard a human warship before. She had expected it to feel different from Sylvari vessels. She had not expected it to feel alive. The crew moved through the corridors with easy purpose. They laughed. They argued. They clapped each other on the shoulders and made jokes that Kira did not understand. It seemed wrong. They were flying toward almost certain death, and they were smiling. Cole's team assembled in the cargo bay on the second day of travel. Kira stood in the corner and watched them arrive. 12 soldiers. 11 men and 1 woman. Each of them had a story. She could feel the weight of their memories pressing against her. Empathic senses. Pain. Loss. Survival. These were not young warriors eager for glory. These were survivors. People who had walked through fire and somehow kept walking. The woman, Sergeant Maya Chung, noticed Kira watching. She walked over with an easy stride. "First time with humans?" Chun asked. Her voice was warm, almost friendly. Kira nodded carefully. "I have met humans before, but not like this. Not soldiers, you mean?" Chun smiled. "We're different. We have to be." She gestured at the team. "See Jackson over there?" He held a bridge for 6 hours against a Wrath assault so civilians could evacuate. Lost his arm. Got a new one. Came back to fight. She pointed at another soldier. Rodriguez survived a ship crash on a hostile world. Walked 100 miles through enemy territory with a broken leg. Killed 14 Wrath with a knife because he ran out of bullets. Kira stared. "How?" she whispered. "How do humans do these things?" Chen's smile faded. She looked out at her team with something like love in her eyes. "Because we're afraid," she said quietly. "Other species think fear makes you weak. Humans know better. Fear keeps you alive. Fear makes you fight harder. And when you're more afraid for the people you love than you are of dying," she shrugged, "that's when humans become dangerous." Cole entered the cargo bay, and the room changed. The soldiers straightened without being told. The laughter stopped. Every eye turned to their commander. "Gather around," Cole said. His voice was quiet, but it carried. He pulled up a holographic display of Station Meridian. The massive structure floated in the air, marked with red dots showing Wrath positions. There were so many red dots. 30,000 Wrath, Cole said calmly. 200 hostages. 1 warlord. He touched a point at the center of the station. "Keth Vorik will be here, in the command center. He's waiting for me. He wants a fight." Cole's lips twitched in something that was not quite a smile. "We're going to give him one." The plan was insane. They would enter through the waste disposal systems, a route no Wrath would think to guard. They would move in 3-person cells, staying hidden, avoiding direct combat whenever possible. Their goal was not to win a battle. Their goal was to cut off the head. "Kill the warlord and the Wrath fracture," Cole explained. "They follow strength. When the strong leader dies, they fight each other to replace him. That's when we extract the hostages. Sergeant Chen raised her hand. Sir, what about the 30,000 wrath between us and the target? Cole looked at her steadily. We go around them. Through them. Whatever it takes. This isn't about fighting fair. This is about winning. The journey took 4 more days. Kira spent most of it watching the humans train. It was not what she expected. Other species train for war by practicing strength. They lifted heavy things. They fought in single combat. They proved themselves through physical dominance. Humans trained differently. She watched. Cole and his team practiced moving through tight spaces. They learned every corridor of Station Meridian from holographic maps. They studied Wrath patrol patterns, looking for weaknesses. They discussed how to create distractions, how to spread fear, how to make 30,000 enemies believe they were under attack from everywhere at once. We don't fight armies, Cole explained when he noticed Kira watching. We fight minds. Make them afraid. Make them confused. Make them turn on each other. By the time they realize what's happening, it's already over. On the 5th night, Kira found Cole alone in the observation deck, staring at the stars. May I join you? She asked. He nodded without speaking. She sat beside him. For a long moment, they watched the stars together in silence. I felt your mind once, Kira said softly. Back on Nex 7, when I reached out with my empathic senses. Cole's jaw tightened. I remember. You carry so much pain, so much anger. How do you control it? He was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was distant. I think about Lily, he said. My daughter. She was 7 when she died. She used to sit with me at night and watch the stars. She said each star was a wish waiting to be found. He swallowed hard. I keep fighting because somewhere out there's another little girl looking at the stars. And she deserves a chance to grow up and find her wishes. Kira felt tears burn in her eyes. Not from sadness, but from the raw beauty of his pain. This man who had killed thousands. This monster that made empires tremble. He was not fighting for revenge. He was fighting for children he had never met. You are not what I expected, she whispered. Neither are you. Cole looked at her. You're afraid of me. I can see it. But you came anyway. Why? Kira considered the question carefully. Because I believe fear is not a reason to stop. It's a reason to be careful. She met his eyes. And because I wanted to understand why the galaxy fears humans so much. Now I think I do. Tell me. You love too much, she said simply. And when that love is threatened, you become something the universe has never seen before. Not the strongest, not the fastest, but the most determined, the most relentless, the most willing to sacrifice everything for what you love. Cole stared at her. Something shifted in his expression. For just a moment, he looked almost human again. My wife used to say something like that, he said quietly. She said humans are just stubborn apes with too much heart. She sounds wise. She was. Cole stood and looked back at the stars. Get some rest, Ambassador. Tomorrow, we reach Station Meridian. And then the real work begins. He walked away, leaving Kira alone with the stars. She sat there for a long time, thinking about love and fear and the strange creatures called humans, who carried both in such terrible abundance. Station Meridian hung in the void like a great metal beast, surrounded by wrath warships. Lights flickered across its hull where invaders had cut through doors and smashed through windows. It was a conquered place now, a tomb waiting to be sealed. The Perseverance crept close under stealth, invisible to sensors. In the cargo bay, 13 figures prepared to enter Hell. Kira pulled on her infiltration suit with trembling hands. She was not a soldier. She had never fired a weapon in her life. But Cole had given her a job, and she intended to do it. Your empathic senses can detect wrath mines from 50 meters, he had explained. You'll be our early warning system. When you feel them coming, we move. Understood? She understood. She was terrified, but she understood. The insertion was a nightmare. They crawled through waste pipes barely wide enough for human shoulders. The smell was horrible. The darkness was absolute. And through it all, Kira felt the heavy presence of wrath mines above them. Thousands of predators, stalking through stolen corridors. They emerged in a maintenance section on the station's lower levels. Cole signaled for silence. The team moved like ghosts, their footsteps making no sound. Kira had never seen humans hunt before. It was beautiful in a terrible way. They communicated with hand signals. They covered each other without thinking about it. They flowed around corners and through doorways like water, always watching, always ready. The first Wrath Patrol never saw them coming. 4 massive warriors, each 7 feet tall, covered in natural armor. They died in seconds. Knives across throats. Hands over mouths. Bodies lowered gently to the floor. No guns. No noise. Just efficiency. They pushed deeper into the station. Kira's mind burned with the effort of sensing enemy positions. The Wrath were everywhere. Their thoughts pressed against her consciousness like hot knives, anger, hunger, the joy of conquest. She wanted to scream. She stayed silent. 2 hours in, they lost their first soldier. A Wrath patrol came around a corner before Kira could warn them. Jackson, the man with the mechanical arm, stepped forward to buy time. His rifle chattered in the corridor. 3 Wrath fell. Then 6 more appeared behind them. Go. Jackson screamed. I'll hold them. Cole grabbed Kira's arm and pulled her forward. She heard Jackson fighting behind them. She heard him laugh, actually laugh, as he killed. Then she heard him die. She felt it too. His mind, bright and burning with purpose, suddenly going dark. The loss hit her like a physical blow. Don't stop, Cole said harshly. Move. They moved. 3 more hours. 3 more soldiers lost? Rodriguez fell holding a stairwell so others could climb. Chun died pulling a wounded teammate to cover. Each death burned itself into Kira's memory. Their final moments seared into her empathic senses. She had felt thousands of deaths in her life, but she had never felt deaths like these. There was no fear in them. Only determination. Only love. They reached the hostage area with 7 soldiers left. The prisoners were held in a large cargo bay, guarded by 100 Wrath. Men, women, and children huddled together behind energy barriers, waiting to die. Cole studied the situation for a long moment. Then he turned to his remaining team. Draw them out, he said quietly. I'm going for the warlord. The soldiers nodded. No one argued. They knew what this meant. Cole looked at Kira. Stay with the team. When the barriers fall, get the hostages to the extraction point. What about you? He did not answer. He simply disappeared into the shadows. What happened? Next would become legend. The soldiers attacked the cargo bay from 3 directions at once. Explosions, gunfire, smoke. 100 Wrath turned to face the assault and found only shadows and screaming. The humans fought like demons. They used the station against itself, collapsing doorways, triggering alarms, making the Wrath chase phantoms. 7 soldiers fought like 700. Kira ran for the hostages. Her fingers flew across the barrier controls while combat raged around her. A young Kurvani boy pressed his face against the energy field, eyes wide with terror. I'm going to get you out, she promised him. I swear it. The barrier fell. She grabbed the boy's hand and pulled him close. Above them, in the command center, Marcus Cole faced Warlord Keth Vorok. The Wrath leader was massive, 8 feet of armored flesh and killing instinct. He wore ceremonial battle plate that had seen 100 conquests. He carried a plasma blade that had cut down champions from a dozen species. He looked at the lone human before him and laughed. "This is the great Cole?" Kathvarik's voice rumbled like thunder. "This is the monster my warriors whisper about. You are small. You are weak. You are nothing." Cole said nothing. He simply raised his combat knife and waited. The warlord charged. What followed was not a battle. It was a lesson. Kathvarik was stronger, faster, better armed. His blade cut through the air like lightning. Cole should have died a dozen times in the first 10 seconds, but humans did not fight fair. Cole dodged. He ducked. He used furniture as shields and threw debris at his enemy's eyes. He let the warlord's own momentum work against him, stepping aside at the last moment, making the giant stumble. The plasma blade caught Cole's shoulder. He kept fighting. It slashed his leg. He kept fighting. Blood poured from a dozen wounds. He kept fighting. "Why won't you die?" Kathvarik roared. Cole drove his knife into a gap in the warlord's armor. Once, twice, 3 times. "Because," Cole said through gritted teeth, "there are children downstairs who need to go home." The warlord staggered. His plasma blade fell from weakening fingers. He looked down at the small human who had destroyed him, this fragile creature that should have been nothing. "What are you?" he whispered. Cole pulled his knife free. "I'm human." He finished it with a single stroke. Below, the Wrath forces faltered. Word spread the warlord was dead. Their invincible leader had fallen to a single enemy. Fear spread through their ranks like fire. They began to fight each other. Kira led the hostages through the chaos, the young Kurvani boy clutching her hand. Around her, the remaining human soldiers formed a protective ring, fighting with their last bullets, their last breaths. They reached the extraction point as the Perseverance descended. The cargo ramp opened. Hostages poured aboard. Kira stopped at the base of the ramp. "Where's Cole?" Sergeant Torres, the pilot, pointed toward the station. A figure limped through the smoke and fire. Cole, covered in blood, most of it his own, but still moving. Still fighting. Still refusing to fall. He reached the ramp and collapsed into Kira's arms. "The children," he gasped. "Are the children safe?" Kira looked at the young Kurvani boy standing nearby, alive and whole. "Yes," she whispered. "They're safe." Cole closed his eyes. For the first time since she had met him, his face looked peaceful. "Good," he said. Then he lost consciousness. The Perseverance burned away from Station Meridian, leaving chaos and fire behind. In the distance, Wrath ships began to turn on each other as commanders fought for power. The invasion was over. The legend was complete. The medical bay of the cruiser Perseverance was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines. Marcus Cole lay on the central bed, wrapped in bandages, connected to tubes that pumped blood and medicine into his broken body. He had been unconscious for 3 days. Kira sat beside him. She had not left since they escaped Station Meridian. The crew brought her food that she barely touched. They brought her blankets that she ignored. She simply sat and watched the slow rise and fall of his chest, feeling his mind drift somewhere between life and death. On the 4th day, his eyes opened. They were unfocused at first, clouded with pain and drugs. Then they found her face, and something like recognition flickered in their depths. "The children," he whispered. His voice was rough, barely audible. Kira leaned forward and took his hand. "Safe, all of them." The hostages were evacuated to Sanctuary Station. "The young Kurvani boy asks about you every day." Cole closed his eyes. She felt something release in his mind, a tension that had been holding him together finally letting go. When he opened his eyes again, There were tears running down his weathered face. She had felt him kill. She had felt his controlled rage and terrible efficiency. But she had never felt him cry. The emotions that poured from him now were so raw, so human, that she found herself weeping with him. "I thought I would die in there," he said quietly. "I was ready to, but you didn't." "No." He looked at her with wonder in his eyes. "Why are you here, Ambassador? You have done your duty. The mission is over." Kira squeezed his hand. "Because you shouldn't wake up alone." "No one should." They sat together in silence as the stars passed by outside the medical bay window. The Galactic Council convened 2 weeks later on Sanctuary Station. It was a grand affair. Flags from 12 species hung in the Great Hall. Millions watched the broadcast across 100 worlds. The Wrath Dominion had collapsed. Without Kethvorak's iron will holding them together, the warrior clans turned on each other. Civil war consumed their territory. Intelligence suggested it would take them decades to recover, if they ever did. The galaxy was saved. And everyone knew who to thank. When they called Marcus Cole forward to receive his honors, the hall fell silent. Representatives from every species watched as the human walked slowly to the central stage. He still moved carefully, his wounds not fully healed. He looked older than his years, tired, done. The council offered him everything. Supreme command of all allied military forces. A permanent seat on the council with full voting rights. Monuments in his name on 100 worlds. Wealth beyond measure. Power beyond imagination. Cole listened to each offer in silence. When they finished, he simply shook his head. "Thank you," he said quietly. His voice carried across the silent hall. "But I don't want any of it. I don't want power. I don't want monuments. I just want to go home." A murmur ran through the crowd. Admiral Zethrak stepped forward, his reptilian face showing confusion. "Commander Cole, you have saved the Galactic Concord. You have earned." "I know what I've earned," Cole interrupted. There was no anger in his voice, only weariness. "I've earned the right to stop. I've been fighting for 20 years, killing for 20 years. I've given everything I have." He looked out at the assembled representatives, the leaders of worlds, the commanders of fleets. "Now I want to see if there's anything left of the man I used to be." He turned and walked out of the hall. No one tried to stop him. 6 months passed. The galaxy moved on. New trade routes opened where Wrath territory had once blocked them. Refugees returned to reclaimed worlds. Peace, fragile but real, spread across the stars. The legend of Marcus Cole grew with each passing month. Songs were written about him. Stories were told. Children played at being the ghost of Korriban, pretending to fight invisible enemies in their backyards. But the man himself had vanished. Kira spent weeks searching for him. She called in favors. She followed rumors. She refused to believe that he had simply disappeared into the void. She found him on a small garden. World called New Promise. It was a settlement for refugees' families who had lost everything to the Wrath War. They had come to this quiet green planet to start over, to plant crops and raise children, and try to remember what peace felt like. Kira landed her shuttle in a field of young wheat. She walked toward a small house at the edge of the settlement, following the directions she had been given by curious but friendly locals. She found Marcus Cole on his knees in a garden. He was planting seeds. His hands were covered in dirt. The sun was warm on his face. He looked up when she approached. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. "You found me," he said. "You didn't make it easy. I didn't make it hard either." A small smile touched his lips, the first real smile she had ever seen from him. "I had a feeling you would come." Kira looked around at the garden. Young plants pushed up through the soil. Flowers bloomed in neat rows. A small irrigation system carried water from a nearby stream. "It's beautiful," she said. It's the same garden I had on Nick 7. I brought the seeds. Cole stood and brushed the dirt from his knees. I told you I used to be a farmer. Turns out I still am. Movement caught Kira's eye. A young Carvani boy ran around the corner of the house, chasing a butterfly. He stopped when he saw her, his reptilian features spreading in a wide grin. Miss Kira. He ran forward and hugged her legs. You came. Cole said you would, but I wasn't sure. Kira knelt and hugged him back. Hello, Tarek. Are you helping Cole with his garden? Yes. He's teaching me how to grow tomatoes. They're red and round and they taste like sunshine. Cole watched them with soft eyes. His family didn't make it off Station Meridian. He has no one left. He shrugged as if it was nothing. So I brought him here. Kira felt her heart expand in her chest. This killer. This monster. This weapon that made empires tremble. He had retired from war to grow vegetables and raise an orphan boy. I came to ask if I could stay, she said quietly. Cole studied her face. You're a diplomat, an ambassador. You have duties, responsibilities. I resigned 2 months ago. Kira straightened and met his eyes. I spent my whole life feeling other people's pain, feeling them die. I need to feel something else now. I need to feel things grow. For a long moment, Cole said nothing. Then he reached into a bag at his feet and pulled out a small shovel. The soil here is good, he said, but it needs work, patience, care. He held out the shovel. If you're staying, you'll need this. Kira took the shovel. Their fingers touched briefly, and she felt something pass between them. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of it, the hope of it. Thank you, she whispered. Cole nodded. He turned back to his garden and knelt in the dirt. After a moment, Kira knelt beside him. They worked together in silence as the sun moved across the sky. Later that evening, Kira stood on the porch of the small house and watched the stars come out. Tarek had fallen asleep inside, exhausted from a day of playing and gardening. Cole stood beside her, 2 cups of tea steaming in his hands. They still tell stories about you, Kira said softly. Across the whole galaxy. The children especially love them. I know. Cole handed her a cup. I hope someday they'll tell different stories. Stories about the man who grew the biggest tomatoes on New Promise. Or the human who taught a Kavani boy how to fish. They might. But they'll always remember the warrior too. Maybe. Cole sipped his tea. But that's okay. Because I'll remember something else. I'll remember that even after everything I did, everything I became, there was still something left worth saving. He looked at her. Even monsters can learn to plant flowers. Kira moved closer to him. Not touching, but near. 2 broken people beginning to heal. What happens now? She asked. Cole looked out at the stars. The same stars his daughter had loved so much. The same stars that had witnessed so much death and destruction. The same stars that now watched over a quiet garden on a small green world. Now we live, he said simply. Now we grow things. Now we see what comes next. In the distance, a child laughed in their sleep. The wheat swayed in the gentle breeze. And 2 souls, one human and one Sylvari, stood together in the darkness, no longer afraid. The galaxy would always remember Marcus Cole, the warrior who made armies tremble. But here, on this quiet world, he was just a man with dirt on his hands and hope in his heart. And that was enough. That was finally enough.